Have you ever considered using Wix as your website development tool? Maybe you thought Wix isn't a viable tool for real professional web designers. Perhaps you selected another CMS platform and you're sticking with it because of the time, energy, blood, sweat, and tears you put into it to become proficient. I get it. Up until 2010, I was still using Dreamweaver and creating HTML websites. Working with a CMS was a whole different animal, and I really didn't understand the concept at the time. I knew I had to make the switch, but I didn't know which one to pick. At that time, the most talked about platforms were Joomla, Drupal, and WordPress. I got a book called Joomla for Dummies, and my goodness, it was a thick book. I really stressed about my choice, and ultimately I picked WordPress, and I'm so glad I did. It's a big deal to consider learning a new platform, either to replace your methods now or to add it to your toolkit. Today, there are tons of CMSs to consider, and if you're like I was, trying to find the easiest platform to get started with, you may want to consider Wix. Now, there are certainly a lot of opinions out there about Wix. Some people love it and some hate it. But listen to these stats. WordPress has the largest market web share, of course, of CMS websites at just over 64% globally. Wix comes in at third place after Shopify with just 3.7% of websites globally. And while that sounds like a really small number, it equates to over 110 million websites worldwide. Wix has been through many evolutions since it came out in 2006. It got a bad reputation for a long time because it had used the Flash editor. But flash forward, and they now use their own development tool called Editor X. This fairly new editor breaks down the walls developers and designers used to hit when they were trying to create websites, enough so that you may want to take a second look at it. Today I'm talking with Matt Cici, who's a web designer and community leader for Wix with expertise in Editor X. He'll share his background that brought him into the web world, and he talks about how he uses Wix for his clients and what kind of clientele he chooses to work with. I think you'll be surprised at how deep you can go with Editor X and Wix. Here we go. Welcome to the Web Pro Savvy Podcast. This is your host, Kathy Servatka. S as in Sam, I-R, V as in Victor, A-T-K-A. Hey, Matt, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Can you just go ahead and give us a sense of how you got into your career, maybe the path that you took, and what you exactly do today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have kind of a mixed medley of a background, I would say. I started making films pretty much in my sort of high school to college career, and just found a passion for filmmaking, creating shorts. I made my first feature when I was a senior at my college and kind of pursued that path. All the while, what will lead to us to this kind of later discussion is building websites, is I would make a website for the films that I was working on, either for other filmmakers or for myself. And then I just really enjoyed the process of making movies, and I wanted to create a sort of educational path for other people that were interested in making film to join me. So I would create different education programs as a part of the film production, bringing people on set, going to schools to talk about the productions themselves. And it was so much fun, and I found it to be really inspiring to allow people to learn, what that production process is like. And honestly, I always wished that I had that sort of resource, but it became really challenging because each film I'd kind of have to start over, find an audience, go to new schools. And so I decided to create an education program for a local festival in my city and kind of have that be the home base for education programming. So I was able to build that program, and I've worked with several other film festivals across the US to help them with their educational programs, and just really found a passion for education. But as you know, in the art world, it's not the easiest thing to make a living from. So I was waiting tables on the side, and then I found the ability, or the opportunity, I guess you could say, to work for Apple. And so I was teaching at Apple as a creative pro and creating curriculum that would happen in their actual stores worldwide, training employees on, using the software, working with customers, things like that. And I really enjoyed that sort of facilitation type education and making films. But again, all this time I was like making a website, one or two every year. And then the pandemic came and everything I knew with film kind of shut down. The stores that I was working at shut down. And so I just decided to like turn on my computer and start to see if that would be something that I could create a job through, but also help small businesses, because most of the places I was working, restaurants, nonprofits, they were all facing huge circumstances to like survive through the pandemic. So that first week of like how everything shut down, I reached out to maybe 20 or 30 different local businesses asking, hey, can I just make you a website so you can take orders online through the pandemic to help you survive? And so that was, I guess, what led me to this point of, working in web design and brand development.
Wow, that's an amazing path. And way to pivot for COVID. I have somebody else I'm talking to that also had to do a major pivot. And I think we all did. You had to recreate yourself, and because we have to survive. And I think that's great. It's kind of like the mother of invention. What are the needs now? And let's solve a problem. Let's do that. So you were able to help restaurants by creating online ordering for them. So did you program that? Do you program?
No, I didn't necessarily program it. I was using some simple online forums for, places that didn't need like a full featured website, but also I would use Wix in order to design and develop a website for those local businesses or nonprofits or whatnot.
So you didn't use so just to sum up, you didn't use programming, you used Wix and its features to create just exactly what they needed. Basically,
yeah. It was being able to create a place, their web presence, where they could, interact with their audience, whether that's customers or clients. And again, it didn't start with like a full featured website. I had like a form tool that was basically, you could think of Google Forms just to kind of put that in your mind, where they could take orders online. So it was really quick to put up. So people didn't have to think about what they would want to look like, what they want to feel like, their brand and everything. It was just like, hey, I just need to take orders because I don't know how to do business when we're told to shut down.
That is such a cool thing. You helped so many businesses then probably make it through this time. Did you get paid for that?
The first round, no. I just basically was like, hey, can I help you? And most of the people I reached out to were restaurants or companies of restaurants that I either knew personally, had worked for, or organizations that I had knew or worked for, and then also like friends and family. I would just like let people know, hey, if you need somebody who can do this, like I'm happy to help.
And that's awesome. And of course, you build your portfolio, you build your skills, all that kind of stuff. I think pretty much everyone listening, and myself included, have done free websites to get exactly that, to get some experience, you can help somebody out while you're also learning, that kind of thing. So that's really good. I love the concept. And I noticed that in the bio that I read about you, that you work with entrepreneurs who are value-based. So I would say that sounds like part of your values is helping. Helping others. Being learn and like you said, getting into education, that kind of thing, helping them. So I think that is really cool. So now you do websites, you develop websites. Because you had such a melange of different things you were doing. So would you call yourself a web designer, web developer?
It's a good question. I think, when you're entering a new place online, you kind of have to type that like biography in. And so typically it kind of goes web designer, filmmaker, educator. at least for right now. We'll see if those switch order.
Okay.
But yeah, that would be potentially how I'd classify myself.
Okay. It's funny how people do not want to label themselves. Some people don't want to use the word freelancer. Some, it's funny. We all have our way. And it has to do also with encompassing exactly what we do and what we want to be doing. So that's cool. Do you have, well, let me ask you, what is the type of clientele that you work with now? Do you have a niche? Is it still restaurants?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think it's restaurants. So I guess I maybe am niching. That's been probably one of the biggest challenges that I've had, coming from a background of like focusing on community and being a resource. It's been really hard for me to just like isolate in one area. And I've read books and attended workshops and taken courses, but they're like, you got to niche down, you got to pick your audience. So if I had to choose, my guess is that I would probably trend toward a solopreneur because that's who I am. I'm a single member agency, which, a business owner, I guess you could say.
I love that.
And, but I've noticed.
I might steal that.
That's okay. I've noticed when I look at like my sort of roster of folks that I work with, they tend to be artists. They tend to be nonprofits. And if they're not those, they tend to work in the education space, like, informing and educating, or the health and wellness space. So my guess is arts and arts nonprofits, which fits pretty well with my background of, working in film and filmmaking and whatnot. But yeah, I have a hard time choosing. And I think it's because when I hear a really good story, I want to help that person start their business or find a way that I can provide a resource. If it's not me creating it, I might be able to guide them in the right direction or point them to the right resource.
Yeah, I love that. I love to do that too. You hear somebody struggling and you know what it is as a solopreneur to get going, to make money, to survive on it. And so when you hear those stories, you're like, I want to help that person. Mm-hmm. So it's compelling. Yeah, that I agree with. Okay, so when you're working with these clients to create their online presence in whatever form that needs to be, what platform do you generally use?
Yeah, so the title of this podcast probably kind of notates what it might be. I tend to choose Wix. And, the question of why would I use that, I think comes from my background. So when I first started making websites, I had tried out several options. In fact, my favorite was using iWeb on Mac. I don't know if you remember.
I remember that.
Back in the day.
Yes.
Like we'd play around with Dreamweaver and things like that. But I really enjoyed creating websites that way. And so I think the closest I could find to that sort of experience was Wix at the time, although it was Flash-based. It's not anymore and it hasn't been for a really long time. But I think people tend to forget that, this idea of scalability and familiarity. So I've become so familiar with the platform, and I've seen people know nothing about web design and feel comfortable in the space. And I've seen businesses that have, huge customer base compared to what I've seen. And they can scale with their customer base on the platform too. So it feels like a good home for anyone just getting started to someone running a really well-run machine or, well-run business. I also use Square. I'm a certified partner for Square as well. And that's
Square, not Squarespace.
Correct. Yeah,
Square.
I know.
Okay.
That's why I do a hard stop after the word Square. The idea of Weebly is their kind of web design platform that they, I think, purchased or owned. And so that's become a part of the Square ecosystem. And I would say if I chose to work through there, it'd usually be through their marketplace as well. But it tends to work really well for folks who have like a physical business. The idea of like online and physical inventory. And when we were doing film festivals, I was like one of the first adopters of the Square card reader. So I've been very familiar with their system for a really long time. And I think just the ease and availability of their sort of payment solutions allows for, anyone who's doing like pretty intense e-commerce. It's a really good platform to use.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Square only in that when I go to the farmer's market,
Yep.
they have it plugged into their phone and that's how they get their payments. I mean, I think there was another one, Intuit, but I think Square was the first one out there with that kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of them out there. Like Clover is pretty popular right now. And Wix has their own POS system too. So I know that like other brands have grown, but we've all kind of been familiar with that little white card reader that you see at, small mom and pop shops or farmers market. It's just so easy to be able to, again, interact and engage with your customers or your audience.
Yeah, exactly. And probably easier to set up than some of the online solutions for that kind of thing for larger stores like Target or something like that. Obviously, something better for the single solopreneur person or small business or farmer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you work generally, I think, with Wix.
Yes.
Can you talk about your background with Wix then? I know you started using it. You like the interface. It seemed to be good with for clients to be able to then edit, update their own websites. How deep are you into Wix?
Yeah.
You have a lot of experience with them. I was just trying to get you to speak about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. For the past, 2.5 years or so, I think there was about a year before I became officially a Wix partner as a part of their marketplace. I had been using it to help a few nonprofits that I knew and an organization that I worked with kind of get a web presence. And so I was like really discovering the potential possibilities, take YouTube courses or watch some videos to get familiar with it. But I learned by doing. And so if I wanted to do something, chances are I'd just try it instead of attend a workshop or watch a video or something like that. I would say 98% of my websites are Wix websites. So I guess deep. And at this point, I'm what's considered to be a legend partner. It's kind of a weird word to throw around because it just sounds very into myself. But the idea is
you're a legend.
Yeah. The idea is that you've scaled enough where you've reached the highest level of the partners. And I think I've worked on 150 plus websites at this point over these past 2.5 years. And I recently was selected as a community leader for Wix. So I teach workshops, classes, I'm a presence in their online support forum. And yeah, it's a huge honor. I'm really excited to be a part of that. It's brand new, just happened this summer. So,
wow. So you started out just learning how to use the program, and now you're involved in the company itself, really.
Yeah.
You said as a in the community, and as a what is a partner?
Yeah, it's a good question. Partner programs are things that exist for other web builders as well. Essentially, it's this idea that you're a recommended designer from the platform. So, at least for Wix anyways, is, they bring me customers from their user base and ask me to help build their websites. I'm also publicly listed on their website as someone who can help you with that. So you start making a website and you're like, get stuck maybe building, or you're at a point where you want to do some SEO and you're just like, I don't really know what this means or how to do it. You can just click hire a partner, and then that will direct you to someone like me.
Wow. Okay. So they're bringing you work,
Mm-hmm.
and you get paid for that work.
Yes, I do.
That's okay. That's really sweet. It's like you have your own sales team out there.
Yeah.
Do you find then when somebody comes to you and they're kind of stuck or they can't do it anymore, that you may step into a mess?
No.
Or is everything pretty okay and you just go from there?
Yeah, I personally come from a different background maybe, and so I don't feel like I I'm coming into a mess. As I mentioned, I taught at Apple. And so you have people with all different backgrounds, tech averse, or they're coming brand new to technology. They're younger, they're older, they're very experienced, and they come to a workshop, but there's 6 to 8 people in that workshop with all different levels. And so my comfort level with teaching or facilitating across those areas of understanding have come to a place where like I just know that people have different experience levels. And so if I can make something as simple as how to find the answer or how to find your resources, that pretty much eliminates this idea of kind of the sort of block in front of accessibility towards technology.
Okay, that's an interesting segue because I was going to ask you, do you ever find, and this has always been something that people have talked about, that you hit a wall when you're creating a website, either creatively or stylistically with the look you're trying to get or with the functionality you're trying to get? It's always in my world been, because I use WordPress, been kind of something that people say, yeah, at some point you're going to hit a wall.
Yeah, I think my answer is going to be kind of like a trick answer. So it's like a yes and a no. So for example, like design limitations, you might feel like you're limited in terms of designing for all different devices. So if you jump on Wix, you might be like, well, can it do mobile? The answer is yes. Can it do tablet? Not necessarily, but now we have Editor X. And so you can design across any breakpoint that you decide. So that's like, it's not a limitation anymore. Another one would be like, well, can I create my own? I don't want to use the checkout system that's provided to me for the stores or e-commerce platform. So similar to WooCommerce, Wix has Wix stores. And I don't want to use that. I want to create my own sort of checkout experience and checkout flow. Great. With Velo, which is Wix's coding language, you can create your own custom coded solution. You can reach other external databases and API if you need to. So used to be a limitation, but it's not anymore. Another example would be, can I create a coaching program and have courses on Wix? And it used to be a point where, no, you couldn't do that. I was working with a client who was basically building an online education platform for kids aged 5 through 9 to learn math. In the UK, it's called maths. While there's a global shutdown and they can't go into schools. And so I worked directly with the Wix team to create courses for Wix. And so now we have this amazing online programs application that allows you to teach courses on Wix. And so it's this idea of like, if you have a direct line of feedback, if the company is open to that feedback and wants to make changes and wants to hear those changes, I just don't feel like there's a limitation anymore because they're willing to work with you to make it happen.
Okay, wait, so you helped develop that capability?
Through feedback and being able to like present the idea, like, hey, I'm wondering if this is possible. And it was like, let's talk. And then this idea of being able to test the iterations of the product over time and working closely with the product leads and engineers of that team to be able to like give them feedback of how best to make this thing.
Wow, that's cool. So we have you to thank for that capability and the how the expansion of the tools in Wix. That's super cool. And I was going to ask you what was Editor X and what was Velo. So Editor X is more design oriented as Velo is more functionality. Do I have that right or no?
Yeah, so Editor X is essentially the new design platform for Wix. It allows you to basically have an advanced editor with design and layout capabilities, a more accessible CSS format. So you don't necessarily have to know all of that language in order to create CSS grids or different layouts or breakpoint design. So if you're a designer listening to this conversation, you'll know what these mean. But if you're a small business owner without any web experience, it's not going to be something that you're familiar with right now. But it's something that through even their education of the platform, in the platform, you can learn pretty quickly. But with that, a lot of people talk about moving to a prototype to the design platform. And so EditorX is a tool that was launched just in February of 2020. So it's very new, but it's already, up there in terms of compatibility and features. And it uses the entire Wix ecosystem that powers 220 million users worldwide. But this idea of taking something from a Figma project and importing it directly into EditorX and having all of your design language there. And it actually started with Wix Stack. So you can upgrade your Wix site to EditorX as well.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
So if I go into Wix, EditorX is what I'm going to be working with. Yes?
You can still design in Wix. And then if you want more scalability, or you want that breakpoint design, or you are a designer who really likes to do custom animations and things like that, EditorX is probably going to be more familiar for you. If you're used to something like Webflow, EditorX is going to feel like home.
Wow. Okay, cool. Well, that's amazing. And so then Velo, if you wanted to get into adding some functionality of some sort that isn't already available, that's what that's for?
Yeah, so Velo is a full stack development platform and empowers you basically to rapidly build, manage, or deploy web applications. So you can create something as simple as just some code to have a custom interaction for a button to building an entire web app. I've seen people, create entire search databases for like real estate using Velo. Or, I myself have been able to create an art gallery, like an interactive art gallery using Velo. So it's pretty powerful. And I think the way I've used it, or like I've described Velo before, is this idea of anything is possible when you kind of turn on developer mode in Wix, and you now unlock the ability to use Velo. And if you have familiarity with coding language like JavaScript, it's based on the foundations of JavaScript, so you'll be able to learn it and start adapting it pretty quickly. There's an entire API resource where you can learn all the different commands that you might use inside of Velo, or different APIs that you might use inside of Velo. So Wix has been very transparent about that sort of process and allowing developers to feel at home on the platform.
That is really cool. When I started, back in the dinosaur days, in the early days, I started, it was just HTML and then Dreamweaver, and then these platforms started showing up, but they were, maybe not so great. And then I had to make my choice. It was either going to be Joomla, Drupal, or WordPress. And that was pretty much it at the time. Thank God I picked WordPress. The other two are, they're a whole other animal. And then since then, of course, there's been so many of these platforms that have come about. But it sounds like Wix is really starting to rise above. The cream rising to the top, I guess. In that they still have the easiness for the average person who maybe doesn't really know web, but can get themselves a web presence. But then if they need the help of somebody like you can go in there and make the magic happen.
Yeah. And I also feel like if you have like a desire or like the behavior of wanting to learn, you could learn it as well. I wasn't someone who would classify myself as a web designer 2-3 years ago. It's only because I decided that it's something I wanted to learn and approach. And, there's so many resources that you can take in and learn from each other that you could build it if you wanted to. But yeah, you could certainly hire someone too.
I think you're my first person I've met who uses Wix as a professional web designer. And I think what this is showing me and everyone listening is that this is a viable option for you. If you don't like the WordPress interface, all of them have a learning curve. Let's just say that. They all have their own way of doing things. Some of them have their own language or terminology that you have to get used to. But Wix seems to be the one that comes up with super cool. I've seen some really cool websites lately that aren't cookie cutter. They're very modern looking. And I know that the people that I'm looking at, I know they created those websites themselves. So, I mean, it's pretty impressive. So anybody out there who's thinking WordPress is just not clicking in your head, because I know that was I hated when I was learning WordPress and everyone was like, oh, it's easy. And I'm like, but it's hard for me. It's easy for you. It's difficult for me. But if there's so many other options out there, and this is clearly one of the options you can consider. If somebody wanted to learn about Wix, if a web designer or other web professional person wanted to learn Wix, how would you say they go about doing that and integrating it, maybe starting to integrate it into their business?
Yeah. One of the things that is a helpful place to get started is relatively new. I think it happened back in May when Wix released a portal of their website called Wix Learn. So it's wix.com/learn. And on there they have their entire library of past workshops, classes, talks, sessions that they've hosted, organized, in a really unique way. And they also are running online courses and certifications for different things like Velo, or what's really important, accessibility on the web, learning how to create a blog. And so you can learn the platform directly from Wix if you want to. That's one way. The other way is there's a lot of tutorials on YouTube. So that's, a great resource for you if you want. Both of those are free. And there's an amazing community of Wix partners and Wix themselves. They host workshops and classes ongoing. And so if you're ever curious to learn alongside someone else who's playing around with the platform, you can do that. It's also the only one that I know of, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you can build an entire website without actually ever having to pay for it. So you can have a website on Wix and never have to pay if you don't want to, a premium plan for hosting or anything. Yeah, there'll be a little banner up top that says like, this was made on Wix. But if you're okay with that, you can have a fully functional website.
Exactly. I mean, if you're just starting out and you got no money, this to me is a really great answer. There's other ones out there. There's even like WordPress.com versus the actual WordPress. There's two different things, right? WordPress.com and then WordPress.org, which is where you really get into it. But .com used to have a free version, but I don't know that they do anymore. And same with Weebly. I think they just have a period of time where you can have it free, and then you gotta pay up. I could be wrong on that, but it's good to know though. So Wix could be free all along until you start making money, and then you can up your game.
Well,
so
yeah,
that's super cool.
Talking about someone who's wanting to learn, I think someone who is maybe a web designer and wants to like rebuild a current existing website, like you could have a window open of a website you like and try to create it in Wix, and again, not have to worry about paying for hosting or anything like that until you're ready to do it. But it could be your portfolio that you're just showing like what you can build for other folks. And so there's that part to it. I guess I probably am not very good at plugging myself, but I do run a weekly training series through my email list. So if you're curious to learn about that, I'd be happy to share.
That was going to be my next question. Because I noticed that one of the things you do is you offer a course on how to make courses, which I don't know why is confusing to me, but I get it because I take courses about learning to make courses. Is that also then not only do you teach it, but do you offer it as a service to a client? Have you ever had a client say, can you set up a teaching platform? Well, you said originally you did.
Yeah.
Right? With the elementary.
Yeah, so it is a course on courses. It's a little bit Inception. That
That's
teaches
right.
you how to do the same thing. But I think that's a huge part of it. Like you might know that you want to have a course, or maybe you don't know. And so the idea of like, what am I doing that's repeatable that I could share with somebody else? Or a course doesn't have to be an actual course. It could be systems and procedures where your business has certain compliance that your employees need to meet. And so if you just have something that's on your own website that only your employees can access, you could do that. And if you're already on Wix, like you don't need to get a Teachable or a Kajabi or a Thinkific. You actually can build it on Wix and keep your entire customer database and your relationships all in the same place.
I think that's always a great thing when you can keep everything in one spot, because it can start to get confusing when you have a service over here and a service over there, and you start fractionalizing all your parts, and you can forget. People forget, oh yeah, I got this thing over here. What other courses do you offer?
Yeah, so I recently just hosted a workshop on building your most effective landing page, and I got such great feedback on it that I recreated different components of it and made it into a self-paced course as well. So you can learn about, how to build your most effective landing page on Wix. And while it's taught for Wix, honestly, anyone could use the same, because I teach like methodology of copywriting and different things that can like attract your audience and to get really focused in terms of wording. And you could put that on a WordPress site or a Webflow site. It would still apply. You just not take the lessons that I show you how to do it in Wix, I guess.
Okay, so with Wix and what you've said, this could be like a two-part thing for anybody listening. It could be something where if you're at a point where you feel like you're ready to build your own course, you can do this through Wix. You can set up a course that teaches people how to do certain things. This might be a good thing for your clients to teach them how to edit their website as well, setting up little segments, I guess, of how to do their edits. But also having, if you happen to have a client who needs a teaching platform, this is something that you can also offer as a service for them, right? So Matt, for those who are interested in learning more about you, the services you offer, and maybe some of the courses you offer that might help them in their business, where can we find you?
Yeah. Easiest place is just my website. So it's mattcici.com, mattcici.com. I'm not really on social media. It's just my model. I'm mostly just through my newsletter and on my website. I do have that weekly training series, so you can sign up for that. Otherwise, if the only thing you want to remember is I'll put something together for everyone here, which will be link.mattcc.com/webprosavvy for you. And that way you can, reference anything that we talked about or get in touch with me if you've got questions. I'm an open book, so I'd be happy to be a resource for you.
And we appreciate that. You've shared some really good insights. Thank you for that. And I'll be putting all of the websites and things that we've referred to in the show notes, so people will be able to look up if they didn't get to jot that down. Matt, it was so great to talk to you and learn from you. And I'm kind of getting a little inkling that I might want to try Wix. and I'm a staunch WordPress person for years now, years and years. So it just intrigues me. And I've seen so many cool sites now that I'm just wondering, because the client doesn't care how you get a website necessarily. I've had a few people request WordPress, but a client wants a website. They don't care how it gets done, just they need it done. And so I don't know that the platform necessarily matters as long as you can do what they need. So I think this is really cool.
Yeah, I would compare it to like my experience in filmmaking. Right now, you can make a film on an iPhone. In fact, a film one Sundance shot on iPhone. It's just a tool. So WordPress, Wix, they're all tools to get to the same result. And wherever you feel most at home and feel like brings you joy should be the place that you stay or play around with. And for me, that's Wix. For you, it might be something else, but we're all doing the same thing, helping people get their presence online to hopefully impact a local or larger community of folks with their product or their service. And so I think we're all just doing the same thing.
That's exactly right. We're all in it to help people. Anybody who's listening now and is a solopreneur, runs a very small couple-person agency, you understand how hard it is to run a small business and to pull everything together. And so I think the majority of us want to help other people who may have those same kind of issues and struggles. This is one thing we can do for them. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciate that. Matt, it was great having you here today. Thank you for joining us and sharing, imparting your wisdom and knowledge with us. And I hope we get to talk again soon.
Of course. Always open to it. And thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.